It's just past 8:14 p.m., and you're tuned to 94.6 FM, one of the few stations still running in the state, if you can even call this running. My name's Greg Tanner, and I'm sitting alone in a half-lit studio on the edge of Ridgeway, Pennsylvania. If you're hearing my voice, it means the backup diesel generator under the stairwell hasn't quit yet. The air in here smells like a mix of burned dust from the heater and that metallic tang you get when the wiring's too hot for too long. Outside, the temperature's dropped fast, 43 degrees and falling, and the wind's got that sharp, uneven howl that slips under doors no matter how many towels you shove against them. The rest of town's dark. No streetlights, no neon, no glow from the gas station signs. Just shadows and the occasional sweep of someone's flashlight cutting across the empty main street. Subscribe for more stories that will take you to sleep. I've been keeping this station on air for years. Used to be a part-time gig, some classic rock in the evenings, local updates, school football scores. But tonight, that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I can't stand the silence, and because too many things have started happening that no one's talking about in the official broadcasts, if you can even find an official broadcast anymore. I've been getting messages from people I trust, old friends, neighbors, things that don't make sense, things that don't fit the story the emergency channel's pushing out. And the more I hear, the less I'm convinced this is just some seasonal flu or power grid hiccup. The first sign for me was last Thursday. I was driving back from Elk Creek, about an hour west of here, after picking up fuel for the generator. On the shoulder of Route 19, just past that bend where the pines block your view, there was a sedan half in the ditch, hazard lights blinking. I slowed down, thinking maybe I could help. The driver's door was open, and the dome light was on, but no one was inside. The weird part wasn't the missing driver. It was the sound, not the wind or the engine ticking in the cold. There was this faint clicking, like someone tapping their nails on glass, coming from somewhere deeper in the trees. I called out, but the sound stopped. When I stepped closer to the car, I noticed streaks of something on the pavement. Looked almost like motor oil until I got the flashlight on it. It was darker than oil, thicker too, and it had this strange shimmer under the beam, like it caught the light wrong. I don't know what it was, and I didn't stick around to find out. I drove off and told myself it was nothing, but I've been hearing that same clicking sound in different places since. By Saturday, more things started lining up. Power outages hitting random blocks in Ridgeway and Brockport without warning. Not during storms, not during high demand, just sudden blackouts. The grocery store on Main shut down mid-afternoon, all the registers freezing up at once. Then, Sunday morning, a friend who works at the water treatment plant told me over a scrambled text that 2 guys from the night shift went home sick with high fevers and blisters on their hands. But when the county health inspector came, the story changed. They said it was heat rash. That's a hell of a heat rash in 40-degree weather. Today's when it really started to slide. Phones are dead more often than they work. The internet's up for maybe an hour at a time before dropping out completely. People in town are saying it's just the grid struggling, but I've been listening to the shortwave and picking up broken bits of conversation from places as far off as Kentucky and Maine. They're all talking about the same thing. Fevers that spike in hours, skin turning this grayish tone like bruising, and something worse. It doesn't stop there. Folks are saying the sickness isn't the same from one person to the next, that it's changing. One guy I caught on the skip from Ohio swore his brother started with a cough, but by the second day he couldn't bend his fingers. Another voice out of New Hampshire said her neighbor's pupils had gone milky white and he couldn't stand sunlight without screaming. Same outbreak, different symptoms, all moving fast. Too fast. I'm no doctor, but I know how people talk when they're scared, and these voices weren't guessing. They were warning. And the strangest part? No one's using the same name for it. The local emergency alert just calls it the incident. The chatter on the shortwave calls it the shift or the mutator. That last one fits a little too well for comfort. It's not just sickness. The way the infrastructure's folding feels like more than coincidence. Ridgeway's got an old FM relay tower south of town, used mostly for weather band. It went offline around 3 this afternoon. 10 minutes later, I picked up an unmarked signal on its frequency. Faint, just bursts of static between short tones. Not Morse. Not any code I know. I recorded it, but when I tried to play it back, the file was corrupted. That's not normal interference. That's something pushing through a system it shouldn't be able to reach. If you're still out there, keep an eye on what's happening in your own street. Don't just wait for the sirens. That's the mistake a lot of folks made in 2018 when the floods came through the valley. They waited until the water was in their living rooms before moving. If your neighbor's been sick for more than a day, and the symptoms don't match what you've heard before, put distance between you. If your water smells off, don't drink it. And if you hear that clicking, that glassy, dry tapping sound, leave. I don't care if it's daylight. I don't care if you think it's just a branch in the wind. Just go. I've been talking too long without taking a sip of water, and I keep glancing at the studio door. I wedged a chair under the handle about an hour ago. Not because I think anyone's coming in, but because I don't like how the hallway's gone so quiet. Usually, even at night, you hear the hum of the vending machines, the pop of the baseboard heaters. Now, nothing but the faint buzz of the transmitter. This building's old, built in the 1960s, with thick concrete walls. It should feel solid, safe. Tonight it feels like a tomb. Before I lose the signal or the fuel runs dry, I'm going to keep talking. I want a record of what's happening here. Because if this thing, whatever it is, keeps changing the way people are saying it is, we're not looking at something you can lock down and wait out. We're looking at something that learns, something that adapts. And if the rumors are true, it's already figuring out how to move through us in more ways than one. It's 9:02 p.m. Now, by the old wall clock that loses a minute every hour, and the heat has slipped a little lower, even though the baseboard is still trying to breathe. I stuck my hand against the glass of the studio window a few minutes ago, and it felt like the freezer door at the market on Main when the power still worked. The kind of cold that steals the feeling from your palm first, then crawls up your wrist. I can see the street from up here when the clouds thin and the moon shows through for a second. Parked cars are nose to tail along the curb, like people lined up and waiting for a door that never opens. A stoplight down at the intersection is dark, but the red lens catches light from a distant porch and looks like a slow, dying ember. I keep talking because the silence has weight to it now. It leans on your chest and makes you think about your breath. You can tell the difference between a quiet night and a night that has been emptied on purpose. This feels like the second one. You hear me because the diesel downstairs is knocking. It coughs on the low notes. It's not a professional setup, just 2 blue drums, a line filter I put together from old parts, and a battery bank that I stole from our remote van after the van wouldn't start. The smell of fuel snakes up the stairwell and hangs under the ceiling, and no matter how many times I crack the window, I can't get it to leave. The building hum, what there is left of it, has gone ragged. When I turn down my headphone volume, I can hear the antenna tuner click, a soft relay tick every few seconds as if it's guessing and re-guessing where the sky is. The town didn't go dark in one move. If you're new to this frequency, if you spun the dial and landed here by accident and stayed because you heard another human voice, let me put it in a straight line. Monday afternoon last week, there were little outages near the hospital. Monroe Street, Hickory, that tight loop where the houses sit close and the maples drop seeds like helicopters on your windshield. Tuesday, we lost service to Ridgeway Elementary, even though the weather was calm, sky like cold wash water. Wednesday, the bank's ATMs started erroring out at the same minute the pharmacy's point of sale froze. And if you think those things aren't tied together, you haven't watched the way small towns get strangled now. Thursday, I saw that sedan in the ditch with the clicking in the tree line. Friday morning, the county pushed a message over the weather band saying, minor grid irregularities, maintain routine, conserve where possible. Friday night, my neighbor knocked on my door with a pale face and said his wife's fever came on like she'd run a marathon. Her skin started to blotch in patterns he said looked almost like fingerprints that weren't hers. And he didn't want to bring her to the ER because the ambulance he called the first time never came back. And the second time he called, there was no ringtone at all. Just a flat. Nothing like the line itself had been cut with scissors. Saturday, the water plant slowed pressure for an hour, then cut completely for 20, and when it returned, people said it tasted like a mouthful of pennies and plastic wrap. Sunday, a church group in Kersey tried to run a soup line outside and had to stop because the cans they opened were fine in the morning and sour by dusk, and I don't have a chemistry book here to tell me how that makes sense. But I know what I tasted when someone brought me a bowl. It was wrong. Tin and mold, and something dull that made your tongue feel thick. Today, the county weather relay gave us tones with no voice, and then tones with a voice that sounded real, until the last sentence where it told people to report to 3 streets that do not exist anywhere in this county. And that's what turned the key for me. We're not looking at a simple failure. We're looking at something that bends systems and likes to test what we will accept if a voice on a speaker says it in a steady way. I went downstairs just before 8 to check the drum levels and walked past the mailroom door, and I'll tell you what I saw because I don't want to be the only one who carries it in my head. There are boxes in there stacked up to the second shelf, and one of them was new, a shipment of promo shirts that came in last week and never got opened. The cardboard had buckled in 3 soft blooms like it had been wet and then dried, but my fingers came away dry when I touched it. In the corner where the floor dips, I found the same dark smear I saw on the highway by the sedan. Not big, the size of my hand spread out. It had that glassy, wrong shimmer under my flashlight. When light hits it straight on, it's almost invisible. When light skims across, it's like the top of a bubble that doesn't pop. I tried to scrape it with a plastic putty knife. It didn't take a mark. It just flexed, and the knife left a notch in itself instead. I didn't breathe for a second because I realized my face was close to it. I took 2 steps back and kept my light on it as I reached up, hit the fan chain, and moved air through the room until the cold in the hallway pushed in. No smell that I could name. No steam. Just that shimmer and the feeling that I'd walked into a room where someone had been talking and stopped when I opened the door. I shut it and wedged a waste bin against it, which I know won't stop anything determined. But my hands needed to do something that looked like control. The sound is getting stranger too. I told you about the clicking near Route 19. Tonight, I heard a different kind of tick behind the drywall by Studio B, a faster beat like rain on a window but inside the wall. I banged my fist where the sound was brightest. It stopped for a full minute, then started again 2 feet to the left. I keep drawing a picture in my head that I don't like. Something small, finding paths where the building settles. Moving by touch, not by sight. Testing edges. I can say I'm not a paranoid man, and still tell you I pulled the plate off the wall thermostat and flipped the breaker to the forced air a few hours ago. Anything that moves air through shared space needs a second thought now. You asked for real details, and I promised not to talk like a TV anchor. So here are names. Around 4 this afternoon, I walked the block up to 3rd Avenue to see if Manny's Hardware still had the lantern mantles I meant to buy last month and never did. Manny stood behind his locked glass door with his phone in his hand like a man holding a diary he doesn't want anyone to see. He opened the door just enough to pass a paper bag through, and I could see that he'd pulled his shelves into a kind of wall around the counter. His hands shook. He's a big guy in his late 50s who wrestled pipe for 30 years and doesn't shake unless his sugar drops, but his color was fine. He said he had 5 customers all day, and one of them paid with silver coins, and one tried to pass a cashier's check for 3 gallons of kerosene. And he could hear the church bells at St. Michael's ring at 2 in the afternoon for 5 minutes, which is not when they ring. He said he tried to call the rectory, and no answer. He said a stray dog came to the door and lifted its head and sniffed like the air itself was meat. And then the dog stuck its nose to the glass, and the dog's nose left no fog. I don't care if you think that's a nothing detail. You've seen enough panting dogs to know a nose prints on glass when it's cold outside. This one didn't. He slid the lantern mantles to me and said not to come back tomorrow. Not a threat, a plea. I nodded and didn't ask why. I knew why as soon as I turned the corner and saw the railroad tracks on Maple empty. No red tail lamp on the end of the afternoon freight, like there has been for the last 3 years, at the same time. The line is a heartbeat in this town. Today, it missed a beat. Something else is in the radio. I don't mean a voice. I mean in the way the signal feels in the ear. If you've worn headphones long enough, you know sound has a shape, not mystical, just the lift and fall of noise that your brain expects. Tonight, the floor noise has a warble under it. It rises and tilts, then flattens, then rises again in a pattern that repeats on a loop every 27 seconds. I timed it with the second hand on the clock, and then again on the stopwatch on the studio board. 27 seconds. Then a pause, then the same rise and tilt exactly. It's small enough that if you're listening on a clock radio in your kitchen while you put cans in a box, you might not notice, but it's there. And when I switch the patch and listen to the raw feed off the antenna before it hits our compressor, the warble is stronger. It's like someone folded a thin ribbon of sound into the carrier. Not a tone, not a voice. Just a push. I tried to null it by shifting the tuner. It moves with me like it knows I'm trying to step off it. I don't have the right words for that yet, but I'll keep listening, and if I figure out how to scrub it, I will tell you how. I saw the first changing skin up close at 6:11 p.m. when I walked across the hall for a bottle of water from the break room fridge. There's a man I know named Doug who cleans the building. Kind man, quiet. Lives with his brother on Poplar Ridge. Walks to work even when the roads ice over because his brother uses the truck, and Doug says the walk keeps his head clear. He was sitting in a chair by the glass doors, jacket on, knit hat pulled down to his ears, hands folded like he was waiting for someone to come out and say his name. His face had the slack of a bad fever. You know the way the muscles go lazy when the body is busy somewhere else. But his eyes were sharp and moved when I said his name. The skin along the side of his neck had a pattern I didn't know how to read. Not a rash, not hives. It looked like a map someone had drawn under the skin with a blunt pencil. Lines that started fine near his ear and grew thicker as they moved toward his collarbone, crossing and recrossing in angles that looked too even to be random. I asked him if he needed a ride. He said his brother was coming, voice low and dry like the words were sticking to the sides of his throat. I asked when his fever started. He said noon. I asked if he'd had the stomach trouble like they talked about on the emergency channel last week. He said no, just the heat and the itch and the feeling that he could hear a noise that wasn't a noise. He put his hand to the side of his head when he said that, not his ear but above it, like the space between the ear and the temple hurt. I asked if he wanted water. He shook his head once, small. Then he asked if the lights were brighter than they were in the morning. I said they were the same lights. He closed his eyes and nodded like I'd said something painful and correct. I told him to sit tight, and I'd check again in 10 minutes, and call his brother if I still had a line. When I came back with the bottle, he was gone. The glass doors were still locked. I didn't hear the stairwell door. I found the empty chair, and on the seat was a smear, like the one in the mailroom but thinner, like someone had drawn a line with a wet finger, and near it, a tiny clear husk, like a wing casing from a cicada. Only it wasn't a husk, and it wasn't clear when I touched it with a napkin. It broke soft like tissue, and left a film on the paper that made the napkin edges curl, like heat had touched them. I washed my hands twice after I threw it away. The sink water ran cold, even with the handle on hot, and if you think I stood there any longer than it took to count to 20, I didn't. I took a wipe with alcohol and cleaned the door handles, and then I set the chair under my studio door handle like that could fix anything. It fixes my mind for a few minutes at a time. Names again. Joe up at the diner left a note taped to the front window with blue painter's tape because the regular tape isn't holding to glass now. The note says closed until further notice. Family emergency. If you know Joe, you know she wouldn't shut those doors unless she had no choice. Not with the freezer full of patties and the back room lined with flour and sugar. The last time she closed was the winter. The bridge flooded and supply trucks couldn't cross for 3 days. Even then, she made coffee for anyone who walked in. If you have keys to a place like that, you check them now and then and listen for the click. Not because you want to loot it, because you want to know if the lock still means what it used to mean. A lock that means nothing is a different kind of world. I promised I'd bring you something from someone who knows more than I do. I can't give you a guest with a clean line, but I can give you what I learned from a man named Arlen, who retired from the state lab in Harrisburg 6 years ago and moved up here to fish and fix lawnmowers in his garage. He's not one for the airwaves, but he likes to talk when the subject is something he can weigh. He said early this morning that whatever we're calling this is not acting like a single bug. He said it looks like a platform, and when I asked him what that means, he said, think of a socket and think of different plugs. Same socket, different shapes. He heard about cases, he still has friends who call him, that start in the blood, cases that shoot straight to the skin, cases that target the mouth and tongue first, so water tastes wrong and food tastes like nothing, and people stop eating before they know why. He said the speed of change between hosts is what scares him, not the severity. He said he saw a set of symptoms on Monday, and a different set on Tuesday that looked like Monday's set, but shifted, nested like someone moved a few pieces. and watched to see how the body reacted. He said that if he had to guess, and he hates guessing, he'd say the thing is reading the host and making itself fit, like a key that melts and re-hardens around a lock so it can open anything. He said, if that's true, then the way to beat it isn't a single cure. It's starving it of the signals it wants. I asked what signals. He said anything that tells it where to go next. Heat, light, chemical messengers. Maybe radio, if it uses electrical patterns the way some fish do to find each other in mud-dark water. I asked him if radio could carry it. He said no, not like that. Not unless we're talking about something we've never seen. But he said radio can carry a pattern that helps, like giving a bad drummer the beat so he can learn the song. He said, if you hear tones where there shouldn't be tones, if you hear a warble that repeats, turn the dial. Not because it will infect you through your ears, but because your body might be the drum, and the rhythm might be teaching something in you how to sync. I didn't sleep after he said that. And I turned down the monitoring speaker and went to headphones because I'd rather be the only drum in the room if a rhythm is coming. If you want practical, I'll give you practical, because I can feel the part of you that's thinking, all this talk, and nothing I can do. Fill water from the line now, if the pressure is still good, and let it sit in wide-mouthed jars for 12 hours to off-gas the weird metal taste. If it still tastes wrong, pour it through a charcoal layer you make with a cut bottle, clean cloth, and the charcoal from your fireplace or your bag of hardwood, not briquettes, with lighter fluid. Boil, if you can. 2 rolling minutes. If you don't have fuel, use a rocket stove made from bricks and a tin can in the driveway with the car pulled back. Don't do it in the garage. Food that tastes dull might not be spoiled yet, but if your mouth tells you it's nothing, mix in salt. Real salt, not a fake blend, because we've got one report that the tongue goes numb before the stomach knows it's in trouble. If you've got bleach, 8 drops of unscented per gallon of clear water, 16 if it's cloudy. Shake and let it stand 30 minutes, and if it smells lightly of bleach at the end, you did it right. Don't drink from soft plastic jugs that have gone brittle. The line is leaching into the water faster than normal. For power, your car battery can run a small inverter long enough to charge radios and a single light. But don't run the engine inside. Crack the hood. Keep the doors open to avoid trapping fumes. And if you have to sleep, sleep with your head higher than your chest to help your lungs if this thing decides your airways are the first stop. Tape the door gaps with painter's tape, not because it seals like plastic wrap, but because it shows you if air is moving in strange ways. The tape will flutter when the air shifts wrong. Keep a paper log. Pens still work when towers don't. And note times, temps, and smells. The nose knows before the mind agrees. As for who to put first in your circle, I can't make you a list, but I'll tell you who my gut says to anchor. The old neighbor who used to run the water system, who knows how to prime a pump by feel. The retired nurse who still keeps a kit beneath her sink. The mechanic who can fix belts with baling wire. The kid who can stand still and listen for a minute without reaching for a screen. The woman who bakes bread and knows how to keep a sour starter alive without a thermometer. If you've got someone who can gut a deer, and someone who can set a bone, and someone who can calm a hallway full of scared parents, you have the making of a town. Hang a line between houses and pin notes with clothespins if the phones die. We used to live like that, and it wasn't romantic then, but it worked. Don't let every door be locked. Let some swing and creak so you hear them and know the wind from the other thing. The government feeds have grown thin. The last clear voice I heard that wasn't a loop was a woman out of a regional office in State College at 1:37 p.m., reading from a script and then breaking off it just enough to sound human. She said to avoid large gatherings in enclosed places even if told to report for screening, because the screening centers were overwhelmed and cross-contamination was likely. She said, "If you hear the phrase heat-tolerant variant in any message, take it as a sign that the message is old. The cases they're seeing now don't track heat like the first wave did. That means someone is sliding in recycled updates to fill dead air." Since then, I've gotten tones with that same 27-second lift hiding under them, and I've heard a couple of smaller county frequencies go live, pop with a single word, "evacuate," and then cut hard to snow. Evacuate where? No cardinal directions, no mile markers, nothing. A word like a flare without a map. I can hear the diesel knock getting a little faster. That happens when the load stutters and the governor chases itself. It's not a crisis, but it's a reminder that nothing here is a sure thing. I've got 10 gallons left downstairs, and if I stretch it and switch to low power after midnight, I can make it until late tomorrow afternoon. After that, I'll need a new plan or a new drum. If you're close and you have a safe way to move, don't bring fuel here. Bring news written on paper, slide it under the side door, ring once, and leave. I'll broadcast what matters and burn what could hurt someone. I'll keep names if the names won't bring harm, and I'll change them if they will. That's the promise I can keep, while promises still mean anything. There's a taste in the air now, like the afterbite of a penny on your tongue, and I only taste it when the wind runs south to north along the alley. It fades when the wind turns. Wind shouldn't taste like that, which means something south of us is breathing something it didn't yesterday. If you have old masks from a woodshop or from the last big sickness, put them by the door and wear them when you go to the porch. Not because they'll stop the thing. I don't know what this thing is yet. But because they take the edge off the air and remind you not to lick your finger to turn the page of a note someone left. I keep thinking about the dog at Manny's window. No fog on the glass. We always look for the big signs and we ignore the small ones because they feel like they belong to a private world. This is your reminder. The small signs are the big ones before the big ones arrive. If your cat won't drink from the bowl, it's always loved. If birds aren't landing on the feeder, even though you filled it the way you always do. If your kid says the light coming through the blinds hurts their eyes when it never did, those are data points. Write them down. You're not being dramatic. You're being the governor of your house. I keep my wallet in my back pocket like anyone my age does, and I took it out before I sat down because the chair squeaks, and I'm tired of hearing the squeak. I flipped through the cards, not because they mean anything tonight, but because they mean something to the person I used to be last week. Driver's license with the bad photo where I blinked. Insurance card for a plan. I don't know if anyone will answer the phone for tomorrow. A folded picture of my sister's kids at Presque Isle last summer with sand stuck in the corner crease because I dropped it and picked it up with wet hands. I'm putting that picture on the console now, not because it changes the signal, but because it changes me when I look at it, and I need that change. If you have something like that, keep it where your eyes go when you rest your head. You're not weak for needing a reason to stand up again. You're a person, and persons stand back up for people, not for ideas. If you've been waiting for me to say what I think this is, I'll say it as plain as I can with the pieces I have. It's a fast-changing outbreak that learns from each host, and it is testing every system at once to find the path with the least resistance. It's using power, water, and radio to confuse while it climbs. It might use animals as scouts or as meters, and it might be teaching nerves to talk to it by feeding them a rhythm. I think the right move is to make your world small. Cut the number of doorways in your day. Eat what you can name. Drink what you can make right. Stand in the sun when it shows and watch what the light does to the spots you don't trust. Don't gather in crowds. Don't follow an anonymous voice to a place you've never been, even if it sounds like help, unless you know a real human who can meet you at the door and say your name the way only a friend can. Make lists. Share lists. Hide your pride until we are through the first hard part, because pride will tell you to go to work to prove you're not scared, and that is how you lose the house and your mother and the man next door who kept a snowblower for everyone on the block. It's 9:43 p.m. now, temperature dropping to 39 by the old analog thermometer I hung outside the window with fishing line, wind steady out of the south-southwest. The warble in the noise floor just hiccuped, so if your radio clicked, you didn't imagine it. Someone out there is pushing on the band. I'm going to stay on as long as the diesel lets me and my voice holds. If the line goes dead, give me 10 minutes and then 30. If it stays dead after that, I'll come back on the top of the hour on low power. If you move from where you are, leave something simple on the table for anyone who comes after. A note that says the day, the hour, 2 arrows, and a word like north, or barn, or bridge. Keep your words short. Long words make you slow. I am still Greg Tanner. This is still 94.6 FM. This room still smells like hot dust and old coffee, and this mic still feels like the only door in town that opens on the first try. If you're tired, you're not alone. If you're scared, you're not the only one awake. Keep your head. Keep your lists. I'll keep talking until I can't, and then I'll start again when I can. It's 10:21 p.m. now, and I've just come back from the stairwell. I had to kill the studio light and walk out with my flashlight against my chest, thumb over the lens so it wouldn't throw a beam out into the alley. The generator's got that wet cough again, like the fuel isn't mixing clean, and when I bent over the drum to check the siphon hose, I caught the smell of something that wasn't diesel. Diesel's sharp, oily. It grabs the back of your throat. This was sweet and flat at the same time, like overripe fruit left in the sun, but it didn't hang. It drifted off the moment the wind shifted. I put my palm on the metal casing of the generator. Cold. Too cold for how long it's been running. It made me think of the old chest freezers at the VFW hall, run for decades without anyone cleaning the coils. Frost building where it shouldn't. The alley was empty when I leaned my shoulder against the doorframe and took a look. The dumpsters on the far end were pushed closer to the wall than they were earlier today. I notice things like that now, because nothing moves in this town unless hands or wind push it. No wind in the alley, which means hands, and I didn't hear the scrape of metal on asphalt when it happened. That's the part that won't leave me. Even the quietest move leaves a sound if you're awake for it. I didn't hear it. I pulled the door shut behind me, locked it, then slid the deadbolt, which we never used before last week. Back upstairs, I passed the break room. The fridge's compressor was cycling too fast, like it was fighting heat. I opened it out of habit. The bottle of water I left inside this morning was beaded over with condensation, but the air inside was warmer than the air in the hallway. Cold should stay put in a box like that. It isn't. I closed it and didn't open the freezer. Some things you don't need to confirm twice. On my desk, there's a piece of paper I've been adding to since yesterday. Times, names, symptoms, changes. I started it for myself, but I'll read some of it here so it's on record if I go quiet. 4:12 p.m., Tuesday. Roy from Chestnut Street. Fever hit in less than 2 hours. Skin around the eyes puffed and turned a light purple, like bruises you get from a fall. By evening, he was rubbing his forearms like the bones itched. 9:05 a.m. Wednesday. Linda at the post office said her tongue felt heavy. By noon, she was speaking slow, like every word had to be hauled up a hill. Said she could hear a low note, like a hum from an old refrigerator, even when she put her hands over her ears. 6:47 p.m. Thursday. Marcus, state road crew, showed up at the diner door holding his shirt away from his chest. Said the skin under his collarbone was hot to the touch, but the rest of him felt cold. When he pulled the fabric back, the skin there had gone pale and smooth, like scar tissue without a scar. 1:33 p.m. today. Doug, building custodian. The pencil line map under his skin. Heard the sound that isn't a sound. Vanished from the chair in under 10 minutes. It's not just the speed that's wrong. It's the way no two people carry it the same way. And once it takes hold, it doesn't hold still. It shifts. That's why the mutator name is catching. The thing inside seems to be testing different builds, like a mechanic swapping parts between races to see which wins. You can't fight something that won't stay one shape unless you keep forcing it back to the shapes it doesn't want. That's where the advice I got from Arlen comes back. Starve it of cues. Starve it of familiar patterns. He told me something else this afternoon over a crackling landline. One of the last in town, still with a dial tone. Said he'd been talking to a contact in Erie who'd been tracking symptoms and progression. The contact swears some hosts start to reject the changes on their own, like the body's learned a trick from watching what's happening to others. But, and here's the part that matters, those hosts don't last. The mutator drops them, moves on, and the people are left hollowed. Not sick anymore, not healthy either. They forget names, forget the feel of tools in their hands, forget routes they've driven every day for years. Like the thing took the shape it wanted, copied it, and left with the template. If you think this means you're safe if you shake it off, you're wrong. You'll be standing there with a body that's yours and a mind with rooms bricked over. You can't survive like that for long out here. Not now. I said earlier, the government feeds are thinning. I just heard another example. 10:04 p.m., a burst on 162.40 megahertz, the weather band. Calm, confident voice saying, "Proceed to designated collection zones for safe evaluation." That's all. No mention of where those zones are, no county name. Just a repeat of that line for 3 minutes. This is how you fish without bait. You throw the line out and wait for someone to ask where to go. Then you follow the voice that asks. Don't be the person who answers. Half an hour ago, I heard the clicking again. This time, not in the wall, but from the ceiling tiles over Studio A. It started slow, then picked up speed, like rain on a metal roof. I froze in the doorway. The vent up there was half open, though I taped it shut 2 days ago. The tape hung in strips, not peeled back, not torn, just cut, like with a blade. The air coming down was cooler than the hallway. I stood under it for all of 3 seconds, then stepped back and shut the studio door. The sound stopped the moment I did. I know some of you listening are in houses with basements, barns, or outbuildings. I want you to think about the vents, the crawl spaces, the gaps in the rafters. Anything that moves air from one space to another is a path. The thing about something that mutates is you can't count on it needing the same doors tomorrow it used today. Block what you can now, while you still know the routes. It's easy to drift into thinking this is just a bad flu, bad luck, bad weather. That's what it wants. That's when it walks through your back door because you're busy worrying about whether you'll have enough soup for the week. You have to think in 2 tracks. Keep the human stuff running, water, food, heat, but keep a part of your head for the pattern. The minute you stop watching the pattern, it writes a new one with you in it. I've got maybe an hour of fuel before I switch to low power. If the tone in your radio changes, if my voice dips or flattens, that's not the mutator. That's me stretching the last gallon. But I'll keep the words coming, even if they ride on static. You're still out there. I know it. And if you're still out there, you can still move, still hide, still breathe air that hasn't been turned against you. That's what I'm holding on to in this room. That, and the hope that tomorrow morning, the wind changes, and that sweet flat smell in the alley doesn't come back. It's 11:06 p.m., and the hall outside the studio smells like the air after lightning, ozone and something sharper, like singed hair. I haven't run anything in here that could burn. The breaker panel's quiet. No hum, no pop. Whatever's putting that smell in the air isn't coming from our wires. I crack the door to the stairwell just enough to look down with the flashlight. The light caught dust motes spinning in a way dust doesn't normally move, like there was a slow pulse of air coming up from below, pushing, pulling, pushing again. I stood there long enough to count 6 of those pulses. When I came back inside, the phone on the desk, a corded relic from before the station upgraded, clicked twice. No ring, just that soft plastic click, like someone picked up and set down the receiver on the other end. I lifted it anyway. All I could hear was breath. Not fast, not panicked. Slow, steady, like someone sleeping with their face close to the mic. I said, "Who is this?" 3 times. No answer. Then the line went dead. I've been telling you the times when this thing shifts speed. Here's another. At 7 p.m., I got a text from Trina over on Willow Lane saying her neighbor's kid, maybe 8 years old, spiked a fever and started shivering around noon. By 6, his skin had blotches like heat rash, except they were cold to the touch. At 7, he stopped shivering and just sat there on the couch, eyes wide, mouth half open. She said it looked like he was watching something behind her, something she couldn't see. At 7:12, he stood up, walked to the front door, and put his hand on the knob like he was waiting for a cue. She locked the deadbolt before he could twist it, and he didn't try again, just went back to the couch and sat. By 8, the blotches were gone, and she swears his eyes looked lighter, like the color had drained. That's 8 hours from fever to whatever that was. We were seeing days before. Now it's hours. She called me again 10 minutes ago. Said the boy's father is coughing now, and not the wet cough from flu. Said it's dry, but the sound's deeper than his chest, like it's echoing up from somewhere lower. It's not just speed, it's reach. 2 days ago, people were saying pets were skittish, hiding. Today I've had 3 separate messages about animals acting wrong. A mailman in the North End said a crow landed on the hood of his truck and didn't fly off when he moved toward it. It just cocked its head and tapped its beak on the metal like it was listening for something inside. An hour later, a guy from across town said the feral cats that hang around the grain silos were sitting in a perfect circle in the lot, all facing outward, tails still. And Trina, same Trina, told me there's a dog in her street that's been pacing a perfect square along the sidewalk for an hour without looking at anything around it. 4 steps, turn, 4 steps, turn, over and over. If you've ever heard of a disease moving through animals before it gets to people, you know why this matters. They're scouts. Whether they mean to be or not, they're feeling the edge of whatever this thing is before it gets to us, and if it's already in them, then it's looking for more doors to open. I dug out the little battery-powered scanner I keep in the drawer. It's old, analog, picks up whatever's in range. I've been sweeping between 150 and 170 megahertz, where emergency crews, utilities, and maintenance chatter usually live. Almost nothing now. But just after 1040, I caught a short burst, 4 seconds long, on 154.890. That's one of the volunteer fire channels. All I heard was, moving through the tree line, not stopping. Then static. If that was a crew trying to report movement, the fact that they cut off mid-sentence is its own message. I've been thinking about what Arlen said, about it being a platform that changes shape for each host. That makes the usual containment plan useless. You can't box in something that redraws itself every time you look away. But maybe there's a limit to how fast it can change. If it's moving this quickly now, from days to hours, maybe it burns itself out if it keeps that pace. Or maybe it's just clearing the slow versions off the board, so it can focus on the builds that work best. Either way, the window between first sign and full change is shrinking. If you were thinking you'd wait a day to see how someone does before acting, stop thinking that way. Act at the first sign, even if it feels too soon. The generator coughed twice while I was writing that down. I'm going to switch to low power after midnight, just enough to keep this signal alive until the sun comes up. If you lose me before then, don't assume it's gone for good. I'll come back when the fuel warms enough to run clean again. I'll say it again, because repetition is the only way it sticks. If you see an animal acting in patterns, circles, squares, lines that start and stop without reason, mark the place in your head and give it wide space. If you hear a cough that sounds deeper than the lungs, get distance. And if someone in your house puts their hand on the door like they're waiting for a cue, don't wait to see what they're waiting for. You've still got hours before the real cold hits. Use them. Tape the vents. Check the doors. Watch the patterns. I'll keep talking until I can't. It's 11:42 p.m., and I've got the scanner running in the background while I talk to you. Every couple of minutes, it stumbles into the same tone. 3 quick pips, a pause, then a long, flat note that hangs just under the edge of hearing. It isn't on one channel. It hops. I've caught it on a county EMS frequency, on the old Parks Department maintenance band, even once on a chunk of spectrum the FCC said was reserved years back for state infrastructure telemetry. No voice follows it. No data burst. Just that sequence, over and over, like a knock you can't unhear. I started keeping a tally. First time was at 11:06, just after I signed off the last note. Next was 11:09, then 11:12. Always 3 minutes apart. Like clockwork. I don't believe in coincidences when the grid's collapsing and every other part of town's gone quiet. This isn't noise. It's a metronome for something. At 11:18, the tone came through while I was tuned to what's left of the volunteer fire repeater. I was just about to spin the dial when I heard a faint voice behind the tone, fainter than the hiss of the scanner's own circuitry, say something I couldn't make out. Then what sounded like advance. Could have been entrance. Could have been static, pretending to be words. But my gut says it wasn't random. If you've been listening to me long enough, you know I'm not one to jump at ghosts. But this feels like coordination. Military does it, shipping lanes do it, even nature does it. Birds in migration, whales across an ocean, signals to keep the pattern in step. And with this mutator thing shifting faster every hour, the idea that it's found a way to sync across distance isn't far-fetched anymore. Here's what's making my skin itch. When that tone runs, the warble under our own FM carrier changes. I've been watching the spectrum display, and the baseline noise dips by a hair, like something's pulling current from the air itself. It's small. Your kitchen radio won't notice. But here, with the board and the meters, I can see it. It dips for the duration of the tone, then comes back up, like it's reaching into every open ear it can find and tugging, just for a second. I got a short text from someone I don't know, number I haven't seen before. It just said, "Heard it." Dogs barked, stopped after long note. No name, no location. The cell network's a mess, so getting even that through means it was sent with purpose. If you're that person and you're still hearing me, write down exactly when you hear it again and what's around you. This is how we trace it, not with labs or satellites, but with human ears and paper. A few minutes ago, I cracked the window to let the generator fumes out. That's when I realized the street was lit in patches, even though there's no power. Patches of pale light, like someone left an old slide projector running in the fog. No shape to them, just drifting spots, and every time one passed over a parked car, the metal gleamed in a way that made my teeth ache. Then I heard the tone again, faint, like it was coming from down the block instead of over the air. When it ended, one of those light patches faded, and the street fell back into shadow. If these tones are a signal, they're not just riding the airwaves, they're bleeding into the ground level, into the physical space we're standing in. That means whatever's using them doesn't care if you've got a radio on or not. If it's in range, you're part of the field. So here's what I want you to do, if you can. The next time you hear anything repeating on your scanner, CB, or even a baby monitor, turn off every light you control and watch what the shadows do. If you see a shift that isn't from the moon or the wind, note the time. That's our map. We can't stop something like this yet. But if we can see when and where it moves, maybe we can stay just outside its reach. It's 11:49 now. The next tone should hit in 2 minutes. I'm going to kill my mic and just listen. I'll come back after, if the room still feels like it's mine. 12:04 a.m., and I just saw it. The tone hit again at exactly 12:03, right on the 3-minute mark. I'd been standing by the window, trying to keep my eyes on the street while also watching the clock. When the long note started, the alley below lit up, not from above, but from the side, like someone swung a floodlight low across the brick. Except there's nothing down there to throw that light. It was pale, almost silver, and it seemed to bend around the dumpsters instead of casting shadows. And in that glow, something moved out from behind the far bin. At first, I thought it was a man, hunched, carrying something in both arms. But the way it stepped, it was wrong. Too even, too balanced, like its feet were matching a drum beat only it could hear. It paused halfway into the open, lifted its head like it was scenting the air, then turned toward the wall of our building. That's when I saw the face, or what should have been a face. The features were still there. Eyes, nose, mouth, but the skin over them was rippling, shifting, like the surface of water in a shallow pan when you tap the edge. It wasn't melting. It was rearranging. The eyes flashed once in the silver light, pale enough to look cloudy. Then the long note ended. The glow faded, and the thing froze mid-step. Not like it was startled, more like a puppet when the strings go slack. It stayed that way for a good 5 seconds, then just turned and walked back into the dark behind the bin. I didn't move until I heard the faintest creak from the records closet behind me, and that was enough to put my back against the console, my heart still kicking hard in my throat. If you're out there and you've been thinking these tones are background noise, stop thinking that. They're calls, commands, and whatever's on the receiving end is locked to them tighter than a soldier to a drill whistle. The worst part? I don't think that thing in the alley was here by accident. It was in step with the tone. It came out exactly when the light did, and it stopped exactly when the sound cut. That means it knew the timing before it started, which means this isn't just coordination. It's rehearsal. If these intervals shorten again, that's your sign they're not just moving. They're moving towards something. And if you're in its path, you won't know until the light bends wrong and the face in front of you isn't staying put. The next one's due in 2 minutes. I'm shutting the mic, locking the chair under the door handle, and keeping my eyes on that alley. If I'm still here after it hits, I'll tell you what I see. 12:07 a.m., and the next tone just rolled through. 3 short pips, that hanging pause, then the long note, and right on cue, the alley lit up again. Same strange silver wash, moving sideways, bending edges instead of making shadows. My breath fogged the glass before I realized I was leaning in too close, so I wiped it with my sleeve just in time to see the thing come out again. It wasn't alone this time. 2 more stepped out from the darkness behind the far bin, both in that same hunched posture, both carrying nothing but moving, like they had a weight in their arms. The one I'd seen before led them, slow, steady, matching its pace to that long note like it was counting each step. Its head turned toward the wall again, toward me, and the skin across its face rippled twice, slower this time, like it was holding a shape instead of changing it. The second one stopped halfway into the light, and I swear its arms lengthened by an inch or two as it straightened. Not by bone, by something else, like tendons stretching past where they're meant to stop. The third stayed back, just inside the shadow, but I could make out the pale flash of eyes watching the leader. When the note cut, all 3 froze in place. That silver light drained out like someone dimming a bulb, and the leader turned, slow as a clock hand, walking back into the dark. The other 2 followed. No hurry, no stumble. Just gone. The whole thing lasted maybe 8 seconds after the tone ended. But my hands are still shaking enough that I had to set the pen down twice trying to write the time. Inside the building, the records closet ticked once, sharp, like a fingernail on wood, and then nothing. I didn't move to check it. I'm not opening that door until I have more than a mic stand to block whatever's on the other side. Here's what I know now. The tones aren't just telling them when to move. They're telling them how to move, when to stop, and maybe even when to look. This isn't random hunting. It's formation. And that silver light? If it's not theirs, it's for them. It's enough to light the path, but not enough to give away what's outside its edge, which makes me think it's not light in the normal sense. It's guidance. If these patterns keep tightening, we'll see that tone hit at 1-minute intervals. And when that happens, they won't be stopping between notes anymore. For now, I'm staying put. Next tone's in 3 minutes. If it changes, you'll hear it in my voice. If I stop talking mid-sentence, you'll know why. 12:10 a.m., and the next tone didn't wait the full 3 minutes. 2 pips in quick succession, then the pause, then that long note, stretched even longer than before. The light in the alley came with it, but this time, it wasn't a narrow wash. It spread wider, bleeding up the walls and into the 2nd-story windows across the street. My whole office went pale, the shadows in the corners flattening like the light was ironing them down. They came out faster. 4 this time. The leader from before, the 2 that followed it, and a new one that moved different, less hunched, more upright, almost casual. That fourth one stopped under the silver and tilted its head back like it was listening to the note in the air. And then it looked straight at my window. I'm high enough up that it shouldn't be able to see me clearly, especially with no lights on in here. But it tracked me, slowly, carefully, like it knew exactly where I was. The skin on its face didn't ripple like the others. Instead, its jaw shifted, the line of it sharpening, cheekbones rising under the skin like something inside was rearranging the frame to match me. The note kept going, and all four started moving toward the wall. No rush, just a steady, inevitable pace. The upright one's hands opened and closed with each step, fingers curling like it was testing their grip. I backed away from the window, keeping low, and grabbed the heavy wrench I keep under the console. The note finally cut, and with it the light, just gone, like someone blew out a candle. For a full 5 seconds, I couldn't see anything outside. Then my eyes caught the faint outline of them slipping back into the alley's shadow. But the upright one didn't follow the others. It stopped just before disappearing and stayed there, still as stone, facing the building. I can't tell if it's waiting for the next tone, or if it's listening for me. The record's closet ticked again, sharper this time, and I could swear the sound came half a beat after the pips. If that thing in the alley is a receiver, maybe whatever's in that closet is too. This pattern's changing faster than I thought it would. If they've dropped from 3 minutes to 2, the next one's going to be here any second. And if that upright one moves before the others, I'm going to have to make a choice. Stay in this room, or head for the stairwell and risk whatever's waiting in the dark between floors. If you're anywhere near the range of this signal, you need to start thinking about what you'll do when the timing breaks completely. It's not if, it's when. And when it does, they won't go back to the shadows after the note stops. I'm keeping the mic live through the next one. If you hear me stop talking mid-breath, just know I went quiet for a reason. 12:12 a.m., and the pips hit while I was still holding my breath. The light came instantly this time. No slow sweep, no bend, just the whole alley and half the street washed in that pale silver. The upright one didn't wait for the others. First step landed before the long note even started, slow and deliberate, like it knew the rhythm by heart. It walked right out from behind the dumpster and into the open, head still tilted, like it was following something only it could hear. The skin on its face was holding steady now, no ripple, but its eyes had that milky haze, and in the silver glow they reflected just enough to show they were locked on my window. The long note deepened halfway through, and that's when it picked up speed. Not a run, just a longer stride, faster swing in the arms, like it had been told it was time to close the gap. The others followed behind it, but they didn't match its pace. They kept to the old measured steps, like they were still on the drill. I backed away from the glass until my calves hit the console. My hand was already on the wrench. I don't know what I thought I'd do from up here, but it felt better to have it. It stopped directly below the window, didn't look up, didn't move, just stood there with its hands open at its sides, head cocked. The long note kept going, but the light around it began to dim, shrinking back toward the walls. And then, right before the tone cut, it spoke. Not loud, not even a full word, just a syllable, drawn out, almost a hum. Grr. The note ended. The light vanished, and when my eyes adjusted, the spot below my window was empty. The closet behind me ticked twice in quick succession, in perfect time with my own heartbeat. That's when I realized my heart had fallen into the same rhythm as the tone without me noticing. I sat down hard and forced myself to breathe out of time until the pulse in my head stopped matching it. They're not just moving to the tones. They're making the tones part of you. That's how they get you to step forward without knowing why. If you've been anywhere near one of these lights, check your breathing. Check your pulse. If it starts to feel like it belongs to something else, break the pattern. Break it now. Next interval's going to tell me if they've dropped it again. If it's 1 minute, we're out of time. 12:14 a.m. and I'm moving. Mic in one hand, wrench in the other, I eased the chair from under the studio door and slid it aside slow enough not to scrape the tile. The hall was darker than it should have been. Emergency lights dead, just the faint orange glow from the stairwell exit sign. I took 3 steps toward it before the next pips came. No pause this time, no mercy. Just the long note crashing through the air like it was being poured into the walls. The silver light bled in from under the stairwell door, painting the steps ahead in that same too clean glow. Halfway down the stairs, I heard it. The sound of bare feet on concrete, slow and heavy, coming up from below. Not running, climbing. Every step matched to the note's rhythm. I flattened against the wall, holding my breath, letting the mic dangle on its cord so it wouldn't swing and hit the railing. The footsteps stopped 1 flight below me. Then came that breathing, not labored, not hurried, just steady and close. I risked a glance over the railing. The upright one was there, head tilted back, looking straight up at me. The light hit its eyes just enough to make them cloud over like ice. Its mouth moved once, and I swear I heard my own name, muffled like someone saying it through a pillow. The note deepened. It took another step up. My legs moved before I told them to. I was backing up the stairs, wrench up trying to keep the distance. The long note ended, and the light drained out of the stairwell like someone had tipped it down the steps. I didn't wait. I turned and ran the last flight back to the studio, slammed the door, and jammed the chair under the handle again. My chest's still heaving, but I can hear it, the sound of the stairwell door opening below, slow and careful. No footsteps yet, just the creak of the hinges. They don't need the full note anymore. Once they've marked you, they can move between tones. That's new. That's bad. If you've been in the path of the light, you need to put more than a door between you and outside. Concrete, steel, dirt, anything to break the line. I'm staying here until the next interval. If the door handle moves, you'll hear it in my voice. 12:16 a.m., and the pips were still echoing in my head when the handle turned. Not a jiggle, not a bump. A slow, steady rotation, like whoever or whatever was on the other side wanted me to hear it, wanted me to feel every fraction of that metal shifting under my eyes. The long note rolled in before the latch could pop. It vibrated through the floorboards, through my shoes, up my legs. The silver light came with it, leaking in under the door in a thin line that wavered like heat over asphalt. I leaned my weight into the chair braced under the handle. The pressure on the other side built, gentle at first, then more insistent. The mic cord was still looped around my wrist, the wrench in my other hand, slick now from sweat. The light under the door thickened, bright enough to throw my shadow back across the wall. That's when I saw it. My shadow wasn't alone. A second one stretched across the wall beside mine, taller, thinner, the head tilted at that too familiar angle. And it was moving when I wasn't. The pressure on the chair stopped. The handle stayed halfway turned. Then came the sound, not from the hall, but from inside the room. A single breath, low and slow, from somewhere behind me. I spun, wrench up, eyes on the closet door. The seam along the bottom was glowing faintly silver, pulsing in time with the long note. The note cut. The light died. Both the door handle and that second shadow vanished at the same time. It's not just outside anymore. If you're hearing me and you've had the silver light touch more than one entry to where you are, you have to assume it's already in. That means moving isn't optional. I'm taking the mic and the portable transmitter and heading for the basement relay now. The next tone's due in less than a minute, and if I'm still here when it hits, I don't think I'll get another chance. If you lose my voice, well, you'll know which way it went. 12:17 a.m., and I'm moving. Mic clipped to my collar, transmitter pack slung by its strap. Wrench in my hand, I shoved the chair clear of the studio door and stepped into the hall. No time to close it behind me. Every second until the next tone is a second I can't waste. The stairwell was darker now, no trace of the silver seep. My boots hit the steps hard, the sound bouncing down ahead of me like a signal flare. Somewhere below, I caught the faint echo of my own pace being matched. One set of footfalls shadowing mine, just far enough behind to stay out of sight. Halfway to the basement, the first pip hit, then the second. I didn't wait for the pause. I dropped the last 5 steps in a jump, landed badly, felt something in my ankle protest, and kept going. The third pip never came. Straight into the long note, low and heavy, like it was aimed through the concrete. The silver light poured in under the basement fire door before I even reached it. It wasn't the soft wash I'd seen in the alley. It came like a wave, flooding the floor, climbing my shins. I yanked the door open and slipped through, pulling it shut behind me. The hinges groaned loud enough to drown my breath. The relay room was colder than it should be, cold enough to see my breath even with the heat from the transmitter racks. The silver glow was in here too, leaking from the seams of the old breaker cabinets. It pulsed in time with the long note above, the rhythm crawling into my bones again, trying to match my heartbeat. I forced myself toward the backup unit in the far corner, boots crunching over something brittle. Looked down. Scattered across the floor were the husks, same kind I'd seen near the chair Doug had been sitting in. Dozens of them, crushed flat in places, some curling inward as if they'd tried to fold themselves shut. The note was still going when the far wall breathed. I mean the wall itself. The cinder block flexed inward, just a fraction, as if something on the other side had leaned against it. Then it flexed again, harder, and a fine mist of dust shook loose from the mortar. I hit the relay's power switch, fed the mic line in, and heard my own voice cut back through the feed. Still here, still live. The note stopped. The glow faded. And in the silence, the wall gave one sharp, hollow knock. If you're hearing me, that means I made it to the basement in time. But the way that wall moved, there's something under us, and it's close enough to hear every word I'm saying. I can hold here for maybe 2 more tones. After that, I need to decide whether to try the utility tunnel out to the street, or lock down and wait for sunrise. If you're anywhere with a wall that breathes, you don't have until sunrise. You have until the next note. 12:19 a.m., and the first pip hit while I was still staring at that wall. Second pip, closer together this time, no pause worth the name. The long note rolled in and the cinder block flexed again, harder, pushing cold air through the hairline cracks in the mortar. The silver glow didn't seep this time. It flared, snapping out from between the seams like lightning frozen mid-strike. I stepped back toward the relay rack, wrench raised, eyes locked on the section of wall that was bowing in. Behind the sound of the tone, I could hear something else. A layered scrape, like dozens of nails or claws raking stone at once, all in perfect unison. The glow surged, and a fine line split through the mortar, dust sifting down in a steady stream. The scraping stopped. Something pressed right up against the opening, so close I could see the shadow of it shift as it moved. Then came the breath, slow, deliberate, and wrong. It didn't fog the air. It pulled the fog in, swallowing it through the crack. The note deepened, and with it came a second pressure from my right. The fire door I'd come through bulged inward, the frame creaking in protest. They were coming from both sides now. I knew then that staying here through another interval meant getting pinned. I yanked the transmitter cord, slung it across my back, and limped for the far corner where the utility tunnel hatch sat flush with the floor. The old steel ring was stiff with rust, but the third yank popped it free. The smell that came up wasn't great, stale water, old concrete, but it wasn't sweet or metallic, and right now that counted as safe. The long note cut mid-breath, and with it, the glow blinked out. The fire door stopped bulging. The crack in the wall just sat there, dark and still. I didn't wait to see if they'd start again without the cue. I dropped into the tunnel, boots hitting the shallow water with a splash loud enough to make me wince. If you lose my signal for a bit, it means I'm moving through the dark, following this tunnel toward the street. If you're hearing me, it means I made it past the first bend. Either way, if they've started coming from both sides of where you are, you're already boxed in. Don't wait for the next tone to prove it. 12:23 a.m., and I'm on the street. The air out here's no warmer than the tunnel. Still has that faint bite, like the kind you get before a lightning storm. The city's quiet in a way that's not natural. No hum from the power lines, no idle engines. Just the occasional drip from a gutter, echoing too loud in the open space. The asphalt under my boots feels softer than it should, like there's give to it. I glance down once and see the faintest shimmer, like the surface of the road is holding a thin skin of water. Could just be the streetlight glow, except there aren't any streetlights. First, Pip hits. It's closer than I expected. Close enough that the sound rattles in my teeth. Second Pip lands just a heartbeat after. The long note floods the street from somewhere down the block, and with it comes that silver light again, this time spilling out of the alleyways like water from a burst main. It doesn't just wash over the road. It climbs the walls, crawls along windows, turning glass into mirrors that don't quite match what's in front of them. Movement in the reflection, faster than the shadows in the real street. The mirrored versions of the buildings lean in slightly, like they're watching me. And the reflections of the alleys, they're full of shapes, upright shapes, swaying just enough to let you know they're breathing. I keep moving toward the nearest storefront, a boarded-up deli with just enough space under the plywood to slip through. The note deepens as I reach the door, and one of the reflections in the glass twitches. Its head tilts toward me, and it grins. The real street is empty. I force the plywood just far enough to squeeze inside. The smell of old meat and mildew hits instantly, but the silver light can't get through here. It just pools outside, sliding over the boards. The note cuts. The reflections vanish. If you're hearing me now, it means I made it into cover before whatever's in those mirrors decided to try crossing over. If you're still outside when the tone starts, don't look at the reflections. Don't try to see if they match. If they don't, it's already looking back at you. 12:25 a.m., and I'm still in the deli. The dark in here is heavy, like the boards didn't just block the light, they kept the air from moving too. Shelves are bare, except for a few cans scattered in the corners, rusted through. The walk-in fridge door stands open at the back, but the inside is blacker than the rest of the place, like it's swallowing what little light there is. First pip. It doesn't come from outside this time. It comes from inside the fridge. Second pip. Same place, but closer, like the sound is stepping out toward me. The long note swells, and with it, the cold, not just in the air, under my skin, crawling through muscle into bone. The boards over the front windows start to glow silver around the edges, and the cracks in the plywood widen like they're being pushed from the outside. I back toward the counter, wrench up, mic cord taut. From the fridge, the darkness starts to change, edges flickering like heat haze. And then it moves. It's not someone stepping out. It's the shadow of someone, peeling itself from the black, pulling away from the wall like paper from wet plaster. The note deepens, and the boards on the windows groan. Something's pressing on them from the street, warping the nails. In the shadow's movement, I hear the faint scrape of a smile. It's the only way I can describe it. I don't wait. I hit the side door behind the counter, push into the alley, and the note cuts off mid-breath. The silver glow outside vanishes like a switch flipped. Behind me, the deli stays silent. But in the window's reflection of the boarded front, I can see the shadow standing there, still grinning, even without the light. If you're hearing me, it means I'm still moving. If you're in a building and the tone starts from inside, it's already in. Get out before the note finishes. 12:27 a.m., and I'm in the alley. The air here is different, thicker, like the humidity's gone up in seconds. The brick walls lean in on both sides, slick with condensation, and every step sounds louder than it should. I keep my back to one wall, moving toward the faint strip of open street at the far end. My ankle's still not right from the basement jump, but the adrenaline's keeping it working. First pip. It's faint this time, echoing off the walls like it's coming from somewhere above. Second pip lands quicker, too quick, and a few droplets fall from overhead, splashing cold on my neck. The long note doesn't just fill the air, it shakes it. A silver haze forms between the tops of the buildings, hanging there like a ceiling, and then it begins to lower. Slow, steady, the glow thickening into something you could almost mistake for fog, except it moves with intent. Halfway down, it starts to press the sound against me, like the note is a weight I can't step out from under. Shadows in the haze twitch, stretching down like they're trying to touch the ground. I break into a limping run for the end of the alley. Every step forward, the haze lowers another few feet. The shapes in it aren't waiting for it to reach me. They're stretching ahead, their tips almost brushing the ground now. 10 feet from the street, the haze drops the last few feet in one rush, and the shapes slam down hard enough to make the puddles jump. I dive forward, hit the street, roll, and come up just outside the glow's reach. The note stops. The haze retracts upward like it was never there. If you're hearing me, that means I made it clear. But whatever's riding in that glow doesn't need to come through doors or walls. It can come straight down if it wants to. If the tone starts above you, don't wait for it to land. You won't be able to move once it does. 12:29 a.m. and I'm staying on the street. Open ground feels safer. At least you can see what's coming, but it also makes you feel like a target. The rows of dark buildings on either side are like teeth, and I'm walking straight down the throat. The asphalt here is cracked, weeds pushing through. A newspaper flutters across the road, but there's no wind. I look up once. Too much sky. No clouds, no stars. Just black. First pip. It rolls in low from the far end of the street and echoes along the buildings until it's behind me too. Second pip comes right after, sharp enough to make me blink. The long note blooms out from everywhere at once. It's not just sound, it's a push, like invisible hands shoving at my chest, slowing me down. The silver light doesn't flood in this time. It streaks, like lines being drawn across the street, fast and precise, crisscrossing into a grid. I watch one line sizzle past my boot. Where it touches, the asphalt changes, darkens, ripples, like there's water under it. Inside each square of the grid, the surface begins to move, bulging upward, something pressing from below. I pick a direction and sprint, leaping over the glowing lines. The bulges follow me, some breaking open just enough for a pale hand, or something like a hand, to push through before sinking back. Halfway down the block, the grid shifts, lines moving to cut me off. I dive over the last one, hit the sidewalk hard, and roll against the base of a brick building. The note cuts, the grid snaps out, and the bulges vanish like they'd never been there. If you're hearing me, I'm breathing hard but still moving. If the tone makes a grid, it's mapping you. And if you stay inside those lines, they'll come up through the ground to take you. 12:31 a.m., and I'm still in the open. The street ahead dips slightly, like it's sloping towards something unseen. The buildings here are lower, more spread out, but the emptiness between them feels worse than the tight alleys, like anything could just step out and be on you before you breathe. The silence is thick. My own footsteps feel too loud. First pip. It's sharp, metallic, like it's echoing off sheet metal somewhere close. Second pip hits fast, faster than any of the others so far, snapping in my ears like it was meant to jolt me. The long note swells, and the temperature drops hard. Breath plumes white in front of me. The silver light comes in differently this time, rising from the storm drains, from cracks in the sidewalk, from the seams in the building walls. It's upward, not outward, shooting into the air and then folding back down like a dome. When it closes, I can feel it, like the air inside is thicker than water. Sounds muffled, motion is heavy. And inside the dome, the light shifts colors, not all silver anymore, but pulsing with faint, sickly green. The buildings around me start to change. Edges blur. Windows stretch taller, narrower. And in the glass, I can see movement. Figures pacing just beyond the reflection. Too tall for the real doors. I move for the edge of the dome, but it's like wading through mud. The figures in the glass are moving faster now, pressing their faces to the panes. Every one of them has the same blank, open mouth. I hit the edge of the dome and shove myself through. It's like breaking the surface of a lake, cold giving way to warm in an instant. The note cuts, the dome collapses, and the buildings are just buildings again. If you're hearing this, it means I got out before they could step through. If the tone traps you in a dome, you're not alone in there. The things in the glass can cross over before the note ends, and they don't need doors. 12:35 a.m., and I'm staying in the doorway. It's recessed just enough to keep me in shadow. The wood around me is warped from years of rain, and something's carved into it. Lines and spirals that look random until you stare too long, and then you realize they repeat in patterns. I don't like how familiar they feel. The air here is still, too still. First pip. It doesn't echo this time. It's dead flat, like the sound was made inside my skull. Second pip lands with the same hollow weight, but closer, right behind my right ear. The long note rises slow, thick, and for a second, I can't tell if I'm hearing it or feeling it in my bones. The silver light doesn't come from outside now. It seeps out from the carvings in the wood around me, thin threads that spread across the doorway like veins. The patterns start to shift. The spirals unwind. The lines stretch into shapes I almost recognize. Shapes that move. In the glow, the wood seems deeper than it should be. Like if I stepped forward, I wouldn't hit a wall. Something is pressing from the other side. I can't see it, but the surface of the wood flexes, bulging toward me with each pulse of the note. My hand is still on the wrench, but my other hand, without me telling it, lifts toward the carvings. It's like a pull in the chest, guiding it forward. My fingertips are an inch from touching when I force myself back, hitting the doorframe hard. The note stops. The glow drains from the carvings, leaving only dead wood. If you're hearing this, it means I didn't step through. If the tone comes from inside your head and the light starts in the walls around you, don't touch it. Whatever's on the other side wants you to make the first move. 12:39 a.m., and I'm rounding the corner. The bend opens into a narrower street, more like an old service lane, paved in mismatched stone, slick underfoot. The buildings here lean in so far their rooftops almost touch, leaving only a thin slit of black above. I can feel the air change the second I step in. It's cooler, but with a faint metallic tang, like the inside of a shut-up train car. First pip. It's almost playful. Shorter, sharper than usual. Second pip hits before the echo fades, bouncing between the walls like it's chasing itself. The long note rises, and the slit of sky above me snaps shut. Not cloud, just gone. The black overhead turns to silver, flat and seamless, sealing me in. The light doesn't pour down. It pulses. Each pulse makes the walls ripple, just slightly, like they're breathing. The ripples sync with the note, and after a few beats, the bricks start to shift. Not crumble, rearrange. Gaps open where there weren't any, stretching into doorways and archways that lead into pitch black. From each gap, a figure steps out, not rushing, not stumbling, just walking, slow and steady, like they've got all the time in the world. They're not lit, not even outlined. The only way I know they're there is by what they hide, the way their bodies block the silver from behind. I pick the closest gap between them and run. As I pass one, the air around it goes dead still, and my chest tightens like I've forgotten how to breathe. The second I'm clear, it releases. I break into the open at the far end, and the slit of sky snaps back into place. The note stops. If you're hearing this, I made it through without touching them. If the tone makes the sky vanish and the walls start making doors, don't go inside. What steps out is waiting for you to pass close enough to take with it. 12:41 a.m., and I'm pushing deeper into the service lanes. The path narrows again, the stone underfoot turning slick with patches of moss. The walls here are older, rougher, pitted like something's been chewing at them for years. No signs, no windows, just blank surfaces that feel too deliberate, like someone didn't want anyone looking in. The lane twists twice, then widens into a small courtyard boxed in on all sides. A single dead tree stands in the middle, its branches knotted into a tangle so dense they blot out the little strip of sky above. First pip. It's low, almost too low to hear, like the sounds passing through water. Second pip slides in just a hair slower, dragging the air with it. The long note swells, and the branches above begin to move. Not sway. Move, like muscles flexing. The knots loosen, curling into shapes that don't look like wood anymore. The silver light leaks down through them in thin streams, striping the courtyard floor. Every patch the light touches shifts from stone to reflection. I look down, and it's not me staring back. It's later. My face, but worn, hollow, eyes sunken like I've been here a long time. The reflections don't stay still. They reach up, hands pressing against the surface from below, trying to pull through. The note climbs higher, and the branches above start to lower, slowly, like they're going to cage me in with the light. I bolt for the far wall, leap, and catch a ledge just as a strip of light sweeps past my boots. Something brushes my heel, cold, slick, and too solid to be water, before I haul myself over. The note cuts. The branches freeze. The reflections vanish. If you're hearing this, I didn't get pulled in. If the tone shows you yourself, it's not a warning. It's bait, and whatever's reaching up already knows what you'll look like when it's done. 12:43 a.m., and I'm staying in the lanes. They're tighter now, the walls rough enough to scrape my shoulders if I don't watch my footing. Every sound I make bounces back too fast, like the space is closing in on me from both ends. The ground dips again, but instead of a courtyard, it opens into a T-junction. Both branches look the same. Narrow, dark, no light beyond a few feet. I pick left without thinking, moving quick. First pip. It's right on top of me, like someone whispered it into my ear. Second pip follows instantly, so close it makes my jaw ache. The long note hits, and the air gets heavy. Not just dense, charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. The silver light doesn't flood in this time. It threads between the bricks in thin, weaving lines, knitting across the lane until it forms a net. The gaps in the net flicker, and in each one there's an eye. Not human, not animal. Flat, reflective discs that rotate, scanning. Every time one of them passes over me, my muscles twitch like I'm about to move on my own. I fight it, keep my steps slow. But the net is tightening, the lines pulling in closer, forcing me toward the far end of the lane. Halfway through, the eyes start blinking in sync with the note. Each blink makes the net lurch forward, collapsing faster. I spot a gap near the ground where the weaving hasn't sealed yet. I drop flat, slide under, and feel one of the lines brush my shoulder. It's cold, but it burns after, like frostbite. I get clear just before the net snaps shut, the lines twisting together into a solid wall behind me. The note stops. The wall is gone. If you're hearing this, I'm clear. If the tone weaves a net, don't let the eyes hold you. Every blink pulls the noose tighter. 12:45 a.m., and I'm pushing for the heart of the lanes. The turns are tighter here, the air warmer. I can smell damp stone and something faintly chemical, like old film developing fluid. My steps echo differently now. hollow, as if there's space under the ground. The lane finally spills into a circular chamber. No roof, just a jagged ring of buildings overhead leaning inward. In the center, there's a dry fountain, its basin cracked and empty. The stone figures around it eroded into almost featureless shapes. First pip. It's deep, resonant, vibrating through my chest like I'm standing inside a drum. Second pip is higher, almost metallic, but perfectly timed, like the two sounds are made to lock together. The long note follows, and the fountain comes alive, not with water, but with light. The cracks in the basin blaze silver, and the eroded figures start growing back. Features fill in where there were none, faces, hands, eyes that open one by one. They're all looking up at me. The light spills over the edges, pooling across the ground. Where it touches the walls, door-shaped outlines flare to life, each one showing somewhere else. Places I know, places I've been, all empty. The note swells, and the figures in the fountain start to sing. It's not words. It's the same note, split into dozens of slightly different pitches. The sound digs into my head, pulling at every memory I recognize in the scenes around the ring. One doorway shows my apartment, lights still on. Another, the diner I used to go to at night. The chairs stacked, coffee cooling in the cups. The pull gets stronger. My feet inch toward the nearest door before I even realize I'm moving. The light's on my boots now, climbing my legs. I drop my wrench into the basin. It clatters loud enough to jar me back, and bolt for the lane I came from. The light fades before it can catch me. If you're hearing this, I didn't step through. If the tone shows you places you know, it's not giving you a way home, it's setting the hook. And once you're through, I don't think you come back.